So I sent a Mary Celestine's 1918 letter to a history class. And they're really excited, and now they wanted a French voice to read the letter. So I'll be posting that video.
Or my personal website.
You needed those?
I will definitely do that.
If it got any cuter, I don't know what I'd do.
Okay, says recording.
So I was saying that was funny. We have a book, and somebody took all the letters from my founder from 1916 to 1958, and there's a letter from 1918, and she said we're all quarantined, we're all baking and eating. That's all we're doing at this point. Like 102 years later.
God. Did you post that?
I should post it.
Oh, you should.
Yeah, I should figure out how to post it. So anyway, the history department would like to use the letter, and they want a French voice to record it. So, yeah.
I'm the token French person.
Yeah.
If you want a guy who does voiceovers for us.
Is it 10 minutes?
I got it.
Yeah.
The milk's warming up.
Let me know if you need this back, otherwise I made it roll.
I think I only have 40%.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, it's really nice.
So, do you think anyone over there is not going to have masks? It might be hard to hear without. It's up to them, I guess. Okay. I just wonder, we'll have to, hopefully the sound will be okay, because it's masks. We'll have to just be loud.
So I should wear my mask.
I guess we should ask them what they want to.
It looks like they're just wearing masks. But it's true. I'll try to post the letter on our Facebook page. The problem is I have to do a little bit of a Photoshop. Perfect. I'm excited. So do you have like one done or not? Oh yeah, you do.
It's magic.
Like Bob Ross.
I feel cheated. Is this how it happens on TV too?
Yeah, but you know Bob Ross, the painter, he always had three paintings. One that was finished, one that wasn't started, and one that was almost finished.
No, I've done this for 19 seniors. You have each step ready to go.
That's great.
Yeah, it always kills me. At Bastille Day, they always want us to be making beignets before the start of the festival.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Anne is not muted, right? Yep, she's not muted. She's got the video. And I've put my sound on low so that she doesn't catch, like her phone doesn't catch the sound from our phones and gets echoey.
So should we do a talking test to see if
Yep.
it's loud enough?
So, MK, how much time do you think?
I think I'll probably, I don't know.
Or maybe-
It's so hard to say. Maybe
We have 1 hour.
Huh?
We have 1 hour total.
Oh, we can have as long as we want, but
Oh, we
I'll
said
probably
that.
take up 1 hour.
are we taking
Do you want to say something over there and see if Berenger went to listen the whole way to see if
I need
it's,
more
to see
time
if
than
she can
that.
hear you?
No, I can ramble on forever. So
Okay.
just not tell me to shut up.
Bonjour Bérangère, est-ce que tu m'entends? Hello?
Oui, oui, très bien.
just wants to see if she can hear us? lot of different noises.
Too many noises.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's mostly visual. And you can't pretend to be professional cinematographer.
And then either your phone or my phone, we can, if we need to. Go like this.
Yeah, but then we'd have to unmute.
Or,
We'd have to,
yeah,
right?
yes.
Actually, it was interesting. In 1918, not only did they have this horrible pandemic that killed many more people than here, but they were first over the first World War.
No?
Right, well, that was part of the problem, was it? Is that the Allies don't want to admit it was a problem.
And should tell
Right,
everyone
and
else to stay muted.
torn down.
Unless, I think I can just,
But
isn't there a way to like,
terrible, horrible, crowded, unsanitary.
but I don't want to mute.
And what I read is that the reason it's called
And then I think maybe unmute. Like this.
right. But Spain was the only one not admitted to the war, so they were the only ones that didn't care if anyone knew what was happening, so they admitted to it. Yeah, no, I've been reading. They had at the height of it. In those years, Philadelphia and St. Louis were about the same size, and they were having troops come home, and Philadelphia decided to have a parade, whereas St. Louis canceled the parade, and the number of dead in the two cities was astounding.
How much one time do you have?
Just a few minutes, 3 minutes.
Master is not good for mustaches.
I have this.
Very cool. It looks slightly science fiction.
Does it help?
I think it's supposed to take it off your mouth some of it.
So do you want this
Do
back?
you want to start by yourself and have me come in, or how do you want to do this?
You can, what do you think? Should we be together? Or just me?
We meet together.
Yeah.
That's cute.
So, do you have an MK table?
And
Yep.
it's short for Mary Kate, but she was my income.
Yep. MK, no last name.
Oh, you get an MK brain on here. I have it on my shop code over here. I'll put it on it. Okay.
Well, we should be muted, right? So,
You're muted.
yeah, sure.
Are you muted?
I'll go through the
Yeah, I think this might be quick because I can hear it from my phone if I put it on this.
If I'm not watching it on, it's going too long, someone say
Same for me. Out.
Yeah.
Are we going to ask for questions in the chat?
Sure. Okay.
And when I get to like 15%, I'll ask you for this one.
Okay. So what do you want it?
I'll have to take a look at M's battery too, but
Alpita is here. Some of our teachers.
and do I leave the mask on? Do I take it off?
That was what we wanted to know, how we could take it off just for the
If
presentation.
there's one person in the frame,
maybe when you're
together.
maybe when you're together you keep it, and then
Yeah.
when it's just one person you can take it off.
Yeah.
We don't want to make it seem like
Right.
It's always funny working with these TV people, because like the 5 minutes before, all of a sudden they got the hairspray and everything going on. And it's like, okay.
All right. Should I let them in and we can wait just a few minutes? So we have 15. Okay.
the little cookie descriptions underneath. No, the description is underneath the.
My husband's watching. My husband's watching. He's a cook as well. Bonjour. My name is Anne. I'm the executive director of l'Alliance Française de Milwaukee, and as you can tell today, I am not at my desk. I am in a fantastic kitchen. We are with Jean Webb of North Shore Boulangerie, and this is their pastry kitchen. Welcome to our delicious holidays Zoom today. You can sort of see what's going on, but unfortunately, you can't smell the wonderful smells I'm smelling right now, and it's only going to get better. I'm not going to take up too much time, but if you want to find out more about the different things the Alliance Française is doing, go to our website, milwaukee.org, and I'm going to pass the mic on to Jean, who's going to show us how to make a kugelhopf today. Merci.
Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to the kitchen. So today we're going to make an Alsatian classic from around Strasbourg, the Alsace-Lorraine region. Kugelhopf is been around in various countries in Europe for a very, very long time. I'm going to get us started on a few steps that take a little bit of time, and then I'm going to sit down and talk a little bit about the history, how it came about, and how we know what we know about Kugelhopf and why it's so delicious. So a Kugelhopf is a breakfast brioche. So of course everyone, many may realize that brioche is a yeast cake that has a fair amount of various amounts of butter mixed in. And the nice thing about that, not only is we're from Wisconsin and butter tastes good, butter's great, it also tenderizes the dough. And that's why these breakfast doughs and pastries, when you bite into them, unlike bread, which has a little bit of pull and a little bit of tooth to it, a little bit of strength to it, the breakfast doughs have a lot of butter mixed in, and that makes them very soft. It can make it a little bit of a challenge to work with early on, and I'll show you what those challenges look like. But we're going to start off by making what's called a pouliche. So a pouliche is basically what you want to do is, this is a yeast cake. You want to give the yeast a little bit of time, a little bit of head start before you mix them into the dough. You want to kind of wake them up, right? This is a quick rise yeast, it's dry. You want to give it a little bit of time to get started before you start mixing it in. So what we're going to do is we have, in the recipe will be coming tomorrow, the exact recipe we're doing today, but we have 265 grams of just slightly warm milk, about as warm as no warmer than what you'd make it for, warm it up for a child. So 265 milk, and then we have 70 grams of quick rise yeast. Mix that up. And then we have 70 grams of pastry flour.
And I have to say, Alsace is very close to the Alliance Française's heart because we're unofficially linked to Mulhouse, and there's a lot of similarities in the history and the background of the cities. They're northern cities with an industrial and maybe a beer background. I'm not quite sure. Certainly a German background, as you can tell with the name Mulhouse and Alsace. So Kugelhopf does not sound like a very French name.
It is not. Kugelhopf is basically there's a couple arguments on this, and each chef has their the story that they get behind. Here are the two stories. Kugelhof. Kugel can be derived from the German word Kuchen, cake, and Hof, which is the old German word for yeast, which modern day is Hefe. So Kugelhof is a yeast cake. The other side of that story is that Kugel also is the name of a hat, a cap, and as we get to it, the very classic Kugelhof mold, once it comes out, once the brioche comes out, it looks like a hat. And Hof is also the word for hop or rise. So somewhere between a hat that hops or a cake that rises, there's a story in there. But it is true. While this is sitting, this is a very ancient edition. It predates the country of France and the country of Germany. In Strasbourg, as they've been doing, they found during archaeological digs that Alsace-Lorraine, currently in France, started off as a Roman outpost. Strasbourg was a provincial Roman capital, and as they've been digging up these old Roman sites in the countryside, they've been finding Kugelhof molds, the old earthenware, glazed earthenware. The old ones weren't glazed so well. Today, thankfully, ours are a little more glazed. But so for centuries, this has been made. At the time, it was the Gaulic tribes in the area that would become France, and the Germanic tribes in the area that would become Germany. But it happened to be that the Kugelhof ended up skewing a little bit kind of Eastern France and the rest of Europe, and so it took the word from German, but the also French use Kugelhof, but it's just spelled. So.
And I just want to, I noticed some comments. The sound is a little difficult. We are in a kitchen with a lot of ventilation, which on Zoom might not work terribly well, but you're in a really authentic space right now. So
I apologize for that, and
we'll
try to get, when the other chef's here for a moment, we'll try to get the vent turned off, and maybe that'll help. Until then, I'll just speak a little more loudly.
Yeah.
Try to be clearer. Okay, so we have our coolish, right? So we've started waking up the yeast, and through the magic of Zoom and television, we have some yeast that have already woken up. And they're all ready to go. So we have our coolish. It's gone for about an hour at room temperature. And we're going to let that sit for just a second, because the next thing I want to do is all Kugelhofs have a crown of almonds around the very top, which when you're baking, it's on the bottom. But to get those almonds to not burn in the oven, while you're doing your coolish, you should soak one almond for every rib in your Kugelhof mold. So these have been soaking for about a half hour. Now the reason you soak them in water is that once you bake this, you don't want the almonds to darken too much. So if you soak them in water, they'll keep a nice light brown color as opposed to getting too dark. And while we have those, we're going to get our mold ready. And for this, what we want to do, even though these are modern Kugelhof hand molds, you really do want to butter them. So this is some very nice French cultured butter. Always made with cultured butter. Well, we might in the US use sweet cream butter when we're buttering our toast. When you're baking, you almost always want to use cultured butter. The flavor that comes through will be so much more authentic. The textures, the palate will be absolutely wonderful. So we're going to just make sure that we get down in all the ribs.
If you don't have a Kugelhof pan, can you make this in a bundt cake pan at home?
Yeah, absolutely. The American bundt is thought to derive from the Kugelhof, even though now we use it as kind of a cake mold. What you might want to do, though, the Kugelhof molds are a little thinner in the bottom, a little narrower. So if you use an American bundt pan, when we get to the baking instructions, you'll want to bake a little bit longer. Add a couple more minutes, because because the bottom of the mold is going to be just a little bit thicker. So we got that. And take your almonds, and I know this might be a little bit tedious, but the end is so much more, it's just beautiful. Make sure the point of your almonds are pointed outward, and each one goes into the bottom of one of the ribs. And again, make sure you have enough butter. You don't want big globs of butter, or else that will form a void in your final product. But enough so that the entire surface gets covered. MK, is there any way to turn the vent off? Now, of course, you don't have to have almonds. If you don't have almonds, it's just as delicious and beautiful without. But at the end, when I show you the final product, it's just a nice little flair, a little touch to it. So our Boulangerie mold is buttered, and now we have all of our almonds in. They're all lined up like the little soldiers. Set that. Common. It's a very rich history. Each region has its own flavors. I was trained by both chefs from Paris and chefs from Alsace-Lorraine. And we always joked that if we were making something from Paris, it would have rum. And if we were making something from Alsace-Lorraine, we would have kirsch. Today, we make both versions in the shop. Today, we're going to make it's orange raisin rum Boulangerie. And so we're going to use golden raisins. You should always use golden raisins when you're baking. Dark raisins, the sugars in a darker raisin are already partially caramelized, whereas in the lighter colored raisins, it's less caramelized. And if anyone's ever made caramel, you know, if you move caramel along too far, it becomes bitter. So if you start with a raisin that already has caramelized sugars in it, by the time you end up baking, you'll end up with little bitter spots. The sugar will get just a little bit bitter. If you start with a lighter colored raisin, you'll end up with a sweeter product, and you won't have those bitter bites. Now, and these are easy enough for us to come by. What I'm going to show you very quickly is how you make a very nice product, candied orange rind, which is very expensive in the shops, but you can make it very easily at home. For the orange rind, what you do is just take a vegetable peeler and take off just the top layer. And you don't want to, if you see your peeler going into the white, the pith, stop. That's all bitter. You want to leave that behind. But we're just going to take the top layer where all those really delicious orange oils are. So
You can smell the orange. It's really delicious.
It's one of my. Everyone thinks of oranges at Christmas, but in my house, my mom cooked with a lot of oranges at the holidays, so it was always that smell, cinnamon and cloves and orange. So take off just the rind, and then what we're going to do is take a solution of equal parts water, equal volume water, and sugar. And we're going to bring that to a boil, and then let it simmer. And what you're looking for here is you're trying to remove some of the water from the orange peel and get the sugar solution to move in. And that's how you actually preserve citrus rind. Now, this is a kind of a really quick method, and we're just going to a 50% sugar solution. So it's really good for something that you're going to use right away. If you want something that's going to be preserved longer, you want to go up to about a 70% sugar solution. That will preserve it for weeks and months on end. So we're going to let that sit. Pop that last one in there. And we did some the other day, and this is our candied orange peel. So you'll notice how it gets a little more translucent. It means that we forced some of the water out, moved some of the sugar in, kept a lot of the oils. What you'll want to do if you do this is not only save your orange rind, save the syrup that comes out. You'll have a really lovely orange syrup that you can use and you can flavor any of your cakes, any of your desserts with this really, really lovely orange syrup. So you actually get to use everything, and if you squeeze the oranges, you've eaten everything. Okay, so we've got, what we have now is about 60, 70 grams of chopped orange peel, candied orange peel, and 60, 70 grams of our golden raisins. And then what we're going to do is we want to flavor them a little bit. And no matter how early it is in the day, rum is always good. And since this recipe was from my Parisian mentor, we use rum. But if you wanted to use kirsch, you can use that too. If you come to the shop, we make rum raisin orange, but we also make a cherry apricot kirsch.
And I traveled in the northeast region of France, and when you're on the roads, there are signs sort of like apples for sale, and it'll say homemade kirsch for sale, and you get it in an old vinegar bottle with a handwritten label on it.
Maybe Cavados, the apple brandy.
Oh,
Kirsch
no.
is cherry.
Yeah, kirsch, yeah.
Okay.
They would just, people would have their own homemade stuff that they would sell on the side of the road. But I'm talking about, a couple decades ago, so this was a while.
Well, it's always wonderful when you're off in the countryside and you have these wonderful finds. Okay, so we're gonna let this sit next to our poolish. Our peels have come to a boil, and the edges are already starting to turn translucent. So I'm gonna turn it off and just let it sit. So we've got our fruit going, we've got our poolish going, and now it's time to put the dough all together. So, although this is a very tender dough, you can use all-purpose flour. There's no need to use pastry flour in this because the tenderness is going to come from the butter that we cut in. Just kind of a technical point. Whenever you put fat, as in butter or cream or oils, into a dough, you almost never have to use pastry flour because it's those fats that are tenderizing it. And often, sometimes if you use pastry flour with a butter or a fat or an oil, your batter will collapse. There won't be enough strength once you put all the oils in.
And I just want to remind our Zoom listeners that Jean does have a PhD in chemistry and specialized in this kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I could geek out on this all day.
You can geek out on it at any time.
I could put everyone to sleep. I guarantee you. So we're gonna start mixing our dough, and what we have is here is 391 grams of just all-purpose flour. Next, we have 11.5 grams of salt, and I'm gonna mix that around a little bit. Just a stray point, always when you put your salt in, mix it around in the flour, because what you don't want is salt is very bad for yeast. So if your yeast happens to hit a pocket of all that salt, you can really inhibit your recipe. Because this is a sweet dough, we have some sugar. There's 37 grams of sucrose, just regular table.
So not 35, but 37.
37, yes.
Okay.
I would, I'm afraid the French mafia would come for me. And then 1 egg. And then we're going to start mixing this. And I think I'm off camera, but I'm just going to put this off to the side.
You're on camera now.
Okay, wonderful.
The beauty of having an iPhone as a camera, not hard to move around.
And it's you can't see this at home, but it's sitting on a big box of Belgian chocolate.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So you all your ingredients in the bowl, your dough hook, and get that started. We'll mix up the egg a little bit, and then we're going to take our poolish. Pop that in. Make sure you get all that good stuff around the corners. we're going to let that go a little bit. Now, because this is a very tender dough, it's going to take a little while to come together. Keep this off. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the butter.
So when you talk about cultured butter versus sweet cream, I thought there were two kinds of butter, salted and unsalted.
Right. Actually, yeah, right. Salted and unsalted. Those are two types. But for whatever historical ways it worked out, both the Brits and the Americans, we use what's called sweet cream butter, which is butter that was just churned, but no culture, no microbial culture was added to it, so there's no fermentation product. And it gives you a, right. We all love butter. This is Wisconsin. But in continental Europe and Ireland, for however again history works out, they use cultured butter, which is made in a process not unlike yogurt or cheese, where you take your dairy product, add in microbial culture. It undergoes a fermentation process, and who doesn't love fermentation? It's all lovely, wonderful. I've never met a ferment I didn't like. But what it does is it creates a lot of flavor. It takes a lot of the simple sugars that are in the that's in the dairy product, and the microbes take those simple sugars up and then put out hundreds and hundreds of flavor components. They're metabolic byproducts is the way, of course, the microbe is thinking about it. But for us, they just taste wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're cutting butter in, when you're making a brioche with butter, this went a little bit far, so I'm going to be careful when I add it. But what you don't want is you don't want the butter to get shiny. This went a little bit far because it was on top of the oven. I was trying to speed it along. But it should be soft, but not real shiny. And the reason is, and especially with a dough such as this, is that the dough is going to be a very tender dough, which means it's going to have a real hard time just pulling itself together. And if the fat from the butter disperses too thoroughly into the dough, it will never come back together. And you'll end up with cake batter in the bottom of your mixing bowl. So it's that fine line. You want it tender, you want it loose enough, slag enough dough so that the final product is tender, but not so much that you can't get the mixer to pull it all together.
It sounds like baking is a lot like a scientific chemical combination of things.
It really is. You know, having been in science for many years before learning to bake, it's a different set of words and nomenclature, but the concepts and what's happening in the bowl is very similar to what you do in a laboratory. Just here we get to enjoy eating the experiment at the end. So yeah, very much so. And the nice thing, and what I find, is that if you really good culinary programs will teach the technical side of what's happening in front of you, as opposed to simply the artistry, which is wonderful in and of itself. But if you get into trouble and an experiment, a recipe is going awry, if you understand what's going on inside the bowl, you have a much better chance of recovering and making an appropriate adjustment, as opposed to just knowing that you put things in a bowl and do this and that, and this is what comes out. So our dough is starting to come together. I'm going to give it a little more. So I'm going to add the, you want to add the butter slowly, especially for something, a recipe like this that has actually a fair amount of butter compared to a lot of other brioches. You want to add in at least 2 additions. Something that has a little less butter and a little stronger dough and a little chewier final product, you can add everything all at once. So I'm going to make a bit of a butter log. Add the first half. Get all that butter good stuff down inside there. And what you'll notice is that I have pretty cohesive, strong ball of dough. And as the butter starts to get mixed in, you can see it weakening the dough, and it'll fall to the bottom of your bowl.
And I assume that you can do this if you have just a home mixer. You don't need a professional mixer like this to do it.
Right, and actually, this is our professional mixers at the other end of the table for larger volumes. This is the regular KitchenAid. So absolutely, yeah. These weaker doughs are actually quite approachable at home. It's often these kind of mixers often have a harder time with bread dough. It's stronger, and the motors aren't quite strong enough to deal with those stronger doughs. But for this, they're actually quite good for brioche. Okay, I'm going to get the rest of the butter in. And just like the rule of thumb at home, what you want to do is mix it until it comes clean away from the bowl. And if it's not coming away clean from the bowl, what you can do is take a little bit of all-purpose flour and in very small amounts, start adding it into the bowl. Because if it's not coming together, we suggest the butter was a bit too warm, the fat over-tenderized the dough, and the mixer's not able to pull it all back together. And you notice, and I don't know that you can see, I'll pull it off in a second, it's coming together very nicely. It's pulling away from the bowl nice and clean.
And you mentioned today we're making an orange raisin rum Kugelhof, and you at the Boulangerie you also make a kirsch and I forgot
cherry apricot kirsch.
Cherry apricot kirsch, but you can also have variations which are savory.
Of course, yeah. If you want to change this recipe, we'll send it out. A rule of thumb for changing a French dough from a savory dough from a sweet dough to a savory dough. Some people think you just take all the sugar out. Don't do that. It'll change the texture too much. In general, the rule of thumb is take out half of the sugar. It'll drop the sweetness down, and then whatever savory components you add into it will give you that savory component. But no matter whether it's tart dough, any kind of brioche, remove half the sugar, and this can be, I've made onion Kugelhof before. Just drop out half the sugar. Okay, so now our dough is coming together. We're going to take our very nice rum-soaked fruit. And start that mixing. And if you would reach into door number 4 over there, cooler, there should be a small check above it. Number 2. There should be right there, right? Yep. So we'll continue mixing that. But what we have is dough that we made a little earlier today.
This is like Bob Ross.
Yeah.
You always have your painting half done underneath.
So, yeah, through the magic of Zoom again.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing to keep in mind, whenever you're working with these very tender doughs, they're going to be sticky and hard to work with. And because there's so much butter in here, you can help yourself out a lot by just chilling the dough down. And all that butter that's in there will harden up a little bit, and it'll make the dough so much easier to work with. So here we have our ball of dough. This is between 360 and 400 grams of dough. And of course we have our buttered Kugelhof. And now you're just going to make a donut. Stick your finger in the middle, and then just very slowly work it around larger and larger. And try to keep it as even as possible, so that the final product. So end up, and then just very gently work it over the central hub of your Kugelhof bowl, and work it down pretty tight. And then you're going to let this proof for anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, depending on how warm your kitchen is. That's the second proof. The dough coming out of the mixer, of course, will have already proofed for about 2 hours before you chill it down. So we have that's ready to go. And what it looks like when it's approved.
Magic.
Magic.
Yeah.
So this is already.
So everybody thinks they've only been out here for 30 minutes, but you've been here for like 4 hours now.
We started this morning.
Okay.
And this, because when I transported it from our other kitchen, it's a little dry. If yours dries off, just take a spritz of water. So we're all ready to go. And then we're going to bake this for 34 minutes total, 17 minutes, then turn it. Depending on how your oven, maybe you have a wonderful oven and you don't have to turn it, but check often the ovens have hot spots and you'll end up with some darker. So at 17 minutes, take a look at it.
So the decoration is not on the top, it's on the bottom.
Right, and most, it's one of those little secrets that almost all French desserts are built upside down, and then it's flipped over and presented to you. So you build from the top up as opposed to the bottom down.
And we have one question in the chat about someone who's asking if the pan is ceramic.
It's pottery or ceramic. It's pottery. The other thing you want to do when you're baking a kugelhof is put a cookie tray in the bottom of your oven, and when you start the baking, put some steam in the oven.
So every time, whenever you bake?
Only for things that you want to get is the maximum lift or oven spring.
Would you do that for your pizza?
If you wanted a puffy crust. If you didn't want a puffy crust, keep the steam out.
Okay.
What temperature is the oven?
The oven is at 325.
But we'll send the recipe, right?
Okay, so 17 minutes, turn 17 minutes, and grab a towel. This is about the color that you want. A nice.
Magic how those 17 minutes just flew by, and it doesn't look too hot.
It's not too hot. But this is considered, it's maybe a little darker than most Americans would bake their cakes. My chefs always call this French brown, and this is what you're going for. So we have our kugelhof. Flip it out.
Whoa, beautiful.
Your crown of almonds, all ready to go. And what you can some people want to put a little more alcohol. If you're going to do that, do it just before you eat it, within a half hour, or else it can actually dry your product out a bit.
But then you could put more.
Then you can always put more.
Yeah,
There's always room for more.
There's always room for more.
What I do in the shop is often I'll put a little bit of butter on it. So that is our Alsatian kugelhof from Raisin Orange.
Fantastic.
And now we're going to segue to our head pastry chef, MK Karina, and she's going to teach you how to make something even more wonderful than a kugelhof.
Well, fantastic. Thanks. And we are so excited to find out about the bombe, right?
Yep. Great. Well, this is getting cleared off a little bit. I'll just say a little bit about myself. My name is MK Reina. Thank you so much for having us. It's always just like 2 or 3 people in here, so I'm so excited to share with all of you. Thank you so much. I graduated from Milwaukee Area Technical College in 2019 with my associate's degree in baking and pastry arts.
And thanks for shouting out that METC is such a fantastic school.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so
I
accessible.
learned so much from my teachers. They have really, really amazing teachers in that program. And, those people led me to so many more connections. So, yes, I love METC. So today we're going to be making bombe du Nord. And it kind of looks like a bombe glacé. You might be familiar with in American style, you would use ice cream, and it would all be frozen, but what we did is, well, in my opinion, a little nicer. We used chocolate mousse, chocolate cake, berry compote, we got mirror glaze. And I'm gonna grab my stuff and just give me 1 second.
So I saw you, MK. You were doing things, and you call this mise en place, which is a French word. And what does mise en place mean other than put it into place?
So mise en place means you want to scale out your ingredients ahead of time. You get all of the equipment that you need. You get everything ready to go, all your dishes. You know, if you need a whisk or a spatula, your mixing bowl, everything you want to get it ready ahead of time. So then when it's time to make everything, you're not running all around the kitchen trying to get everything in order. So, all right.
And you're measuring. I see it instead of a pinch, you have 2.5 grams of salt.
Yeah, yeah. So we do everything in grams. Anything you could possibly be making in our kitchen, you use grams. You can do cups at home, and some of my old home recipes are still in cups. I should change those. But what's great about using grams is that when you're making different size batches, different size recipes, it's super easy to convert everything. So instead of multiplying 3/4 cups by 2.5, you just have one number. You just have your grams. You can multiply and divide it whatever you need. So, to start off, we're going to be making a chocolate mousse. Probably more straightforward than you think. We're going to make an anglaise and whip some cream, get it all together.
So it's an anglaise sauce. Means in French would mean an English sauce, but it's in French.
Yeah, anglaise. So you would make an anglaise for some other various different types of creams. For ice cream, you start with an anglaise. So just so you get an idea, there are some similarities definitely between mousse and ice cream. We'll get to that. So, okay, you're going to start out by melting your chocolate. I'm making a pretty small batch today just for the example, but usually I would do twice this size. So you've got your chocolate melted.
Just a normal chocolate? What kind
This is Belgian chocolate, and we use, I believe, 54% cocoa. All right, and then got all my other stuff here. So let's start with your saucepan. And in this one container, I have cream, milk, sugar, and salt. You'll see it says sucrose, and that's basically just like the scientific term for granulated sugar, as to not be confused with powdered sugar. So I'll do that. All in there.
This seems like something there's no way that anybody could ever do, the finished product. So I'm really excited to see how it's going to work.
Yeah, with every step it gets more and more exciting. So we've got our stuff here on the stove, and you're just going to heat it to simmering. You don't want it to be overflowing all over the place.
So you don't just put it and then start your Netflix show next door?
Sorry?
You don't just put it on the stove and then go finish your film you're watching?
Oh, no, unfortunately you have to watch milking because if they overflow, it's happened to me on numerous occasions. I would not recommend.
And Peggy's asking if you melt the chocolate over a warm water bath.
So there's some controversy between using a microwave or a water bath. I was taught by a chocolatier that trained in Europe for 2 years, and I can tell you it doesn't make a difference. I use microwave because it's way easier. The only thing is metal bowls are a little bit easier to keep temperature controlled because it keeps the heat in the bowl. But you can always remelt it. That's heating up. Here I have egg yolk. So this is 27.5 grams of yolk. It's not a lot. It's like one yolk and then a little bit more. So to make it on glaze, you'll heat up all your dairy, and then I'm just gonna put my yolk in here. Basically, you're tempering the hot liquid in the yolk, and the reason why you can't add it all at once is because it will cook the yolk. So you have to add a little bit at a time and whisk vigorously to make sure everything is cooked. And then we'll temp it, make sure it's at the right time so it's safe to eat. So this is in there. Yeah, you can probably smell that chocolate.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're simmering here, so I'm just gonna turn it off. And I'm gonna start whisking vigorously. It's hard to show with the small amount, usually again, a bigger batch. But you're just gonna add just a little bit of it. Basically just the runny liquid. And then we're gonna temp it here. So to cook eggs, to be super safe, you go to 165 degrees. I think in Celsius, that's about 78 degrees.
So it's a type of a pudding in a way.
In a way, yeah. And we'll add to the chocolate and the
Or
cream and all that
custard,
good stuff.
rather.
Yep, so we're not quite there, so we're gonna go right back on the burner. Okay. So this heats up really, really quick. And if you do it too fast, you'll end up with like chunks of egg, like scrambled eggs. Alright, here we go. Right there, 165. So now from here, I'm just gonna whisk it right into the chocolate that's already melted here. So one thing that's really important to remember when you're using, like basically when you're cooking eggs in a recipe is what ingredients have touched the raw egg. So I have a spatula over there that was touching the yolks. And unless you can thoroughly wash it in between, don't reuse it because that's still raw egg. So this here, I'm just gonna mix that all together real nice.
But if you have time to rinse things between times, it's okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just you want to avoid that raw yolk.
Yeah, it's really smelling fantastic.
Oh yeah, there you go. Now you'll really get it. I'm gonna scrape down the sides of my bowl. Make sure everything is evenly dispersed. One of my teachers in college his catchphrase was scrape, scrape, scrape. Every bowl, everything you do, you gotta scrape it. You get, all your baking soda went to the bottom of the bowl. The rest of the dough is not gonna have baking soda. Alright, so that's all good to go here. And then here I have more cream, and we're just gonna whip it up. Now, I think a common misconception with cream and baking is that you're like whipping it to be fully whipped like stick peaks. But that's really not how you want to do it most times. The terminology that we kind of use here is you want to whip it until it's like loose, which just means it's thick, but it's not it's not like fully liquid, but you're probably right before soft peak stage. So we'll let that go. One thing when you're whipping up, I guess almost anything, especially egg whites or cream or something that needs to stay stable, you never want to go on the highest speed. And I know it's always tempting to just like you want to get it over with, but if you're mixing and you have your whisk attachment, never go to the highest speed right away, because when you're whisking, you're incorporating air, and when you have those air bubbles, you want them to all be the same size. So when you're whisking on a really, really high speed, all of your air bubbles are going to be all different sizes, and it's not going to be as stable as it would be if you just went slow and steady. So here I'm on speed 6 of this mixer. It's getting a little bubbly.
And I know that if you whip it too much, it becomes butter.
Yes, you don't want to overload the cream. You never want to walk away from your cream for more than like 30 seconds, because you never know, sometimes it'll catch right away and it'll be super, super thick. So if you're just making whipped cream to put on like a pie or something like
you just buy heavy whipping cream in the store? Or
Yeah. I mean, you know, there's the kind we get, I think is a little higher quality. It kind of depends on what you're getting, but all in all, it's not going to make a huge difference unless you're like on opposite sides of the spectrum. Go up one notch. It's getting there. It's getting a little thick. Frothy. We're getting there. Any questions so far?
so, are there variations with making one in chocolate? Is it possible to make it a different flavor, or does it?
Yeah. I mean, different types of chocolates have different kind of properties in them, but generally, your base for, I would say almost any mousse is probably chocolate and cream. So we make some of our fruit mousses. The base is white chocolate and cream, and then you just have that subtle, really nice white chocolate flavor. And then you can add whatever other flavor you want to it. So all right, we're getting here. So you can see it's not even deep, it's not even a little bit, but it's jiggly. It's not running all over the place. So that is perfect. Now we're going to fold our cream into our other mixture here. So you can see when I pour it too, you can kind of see how thick it is. So you can add all that once. Typically,
It was a bad idea to do this at 5 when we're starving.
well, thankfully, I already got that and I have a couple for you to try if you would like to try some. Otherwise, for anyone watching, you can get them at our storefront in shortly. So we want to fold in our cream because you just created all those really nice, beautiful air bubbles in your cream. And instead of whisking or vigorously mixing, you're going to fold so you can kind of.
So it's possible by mixing too much that you're getting the bubbles out, not adding the bubbles in, right?
Exactly. It's tricky because to get bubbles in, you whisk it really, really fast. But once those bubbles are made, you don't want to lose them. All right. So my friends, this is chocolate mousse. Super yummy on its own. It's pretty thin right now, but then once it burns up, once it has time to set, it gets pretty stiff in the fridge or in the freezer. So now to actually assemble the mousse bombs, I'm just going to grab a couple things here real quick.
Chocolate mousse for me really is like the quintessential French dish. And it always seems a little bit daunting on how you actually can make it. And MK makes it sound really easy. I'm not quite sure it's as easy as she says.
It's easier than you think.
Yeah. And again, we're doing the little where we have some unfinished ones and then some that MK started making earlier today or even other days. I don't know.
I made those ones yesterday. So clean my station a little bit here. So what goes actually inside the bomb is we bake a big sheet pan of chocolate cake and then we cut it out into circles that kind of fit into the molds nicely.
And what is the difference between that and a brownie?
So this is chocolate cake. So it's a lot more spongy, like more light and fluffy and airy. Versus brownie would be a lot more dense and thick. I'm gonna throw my gloves here real quick.
So we're talking about chocolate cake and chocolate mousse. So it's a double chocolate kind of thing.
Oh yeah. And then the berry compote center is really, that really flavorful press too hard, but just give it a nice little pat so it's in there. Perfect. And then you can set these aside for a second. Now we will return here. So you're just going to start with fully scooping in the mousse. So you're going to do a full one.
So one, you don't quite fill it up.
No, because you need room for the compote and the heat. But you want enough that when you push it in, it will come up the sides, because then you won't end up with any of your ear pockets.
So, MK, when did you start getting interested in cooking?
Well, I am not much of a cook at all, but baking.
Baking, okay.
I feel like I have to clear that up because I can make mac and cheese and ramen. I'm not a big cook, but I started baking when I was a kid, like we all kind of do, and I would bake along with my mom and my grandma. Then when I was in high school, it's a stressful time. I had a really rough time in my teenage years, and I really found peace through baking. So eventually, when it came time to pick something to do after high school, I was like, yes, I'll do that. And I was already baking all the time. I was working at a small custom cake shop in my hometown. And it just made sense, and I'm so glad I did it.
So you're not from Milwaukee?
So I lived in Green Bay until I was 10, and then we moved to Muskego, which is a suburb like 20 miles west of here. It feels a lot farther. It's out there, but now I live in Milwaukee. I work in Milwaukee. I was in Milwaukee. I love it here way more than that suburban life. Okay, we've got our cake in our attached little compote, and you're just going to press it. So you want it to even out with about the edge of the mold here. So, and you see it sticks really nicely.
And why is it called a bon du Nord, a northern bomb?
I don't know, Gene, do you know this one? Why is it called a bon du Nord?
It's a bit of it was always a bit of a play on words, right? The train station in Paris, Gare du Nord. And of course, I was opening a bakery in the Great White North, and so I thought that would be a nice play on words. Usually, they're just called Bon. Bon du Nord for those who have wandered around Paris and found themselves out of necessity or by accident in the Gare du Nord.
So this is a creation of North Shore Boulangerie?
Yeah, this is a recipe that we developed for our shop.
Fantastic.
All right, so you got everything in there, and then basically you're just going to smooth it all out, smooth out the edges. Super simple. Just take one nice swipe across. All right, and then you freeze these overnight, so we're going to fast forward 24 hours. Now, we have our nice finished ones over here, and we glaze them with mirror glaze, so they're super nice and shiny and pristine. It just adds so much. They look so beautiful. All right, got my rack here. They're really nice, and you can see, I mean, that mousse is thick in there. It looks pretty light there, but when you bite into it, oh my gosh, it's just the most.
So people if they want to make this at home, I don't know if we're doing this, probably not, no. Well, to make this kind of dish, you would need a silicone can like this.
Yes, yeah. And the silicone is really nice because it's all bendy, but you couldn't use like a plastic mold for something like this. That would never go too well. Okay, so now we're gonna get some really satisfying, fun glazing action. So I have my mirror glaze here. You can see it's nice and shiny. You try not to stir it too much because you don't want to get air bubbles in there. But it's very simple.
So what are the ingredients?
Sure. So this is let me think. Cream, milk. We've got glucose syrup in there. Trimoline. Oh man, you put me on the spot here.
Chocolate maybe?
Chocolate, cocoa powder, sugar, water. What am I forgetting? Cocoa powder.
And what?
Different forms of sugar, right? So you've got sucrose, like I said, normal granulated sugar, glucose, lactose, all that stuff. Trimoline is basically a different variation of those processed a little bit differently. Right.
You want all those different sugars in there. If you have if the sugar mixture is too simple, the sugars will start to crystallize, and you'll start getting these blemishes on the surface of this mirror glaze, which you don't want. So by adding in trimoline, it's an inverted sugar, it has a different shape, and it won't crystallize, and so everything stays shiny. Honey is an example of an inverted sugar.
Alrighty, so we got these. We're just gonna pour it over. You don't really need too much. Ooh. Yeah, I know, it looks so nice, right? It's always fun to do it. Get a nice layer on there. Alright. Normally we'd save this glaze, but it's a little batch and just for time's sake, we're gonna leave it as is.
It's almost like a mirror. It's so shiny.
Mirror glaze, yeah, it's almost like a mirror. So true. Let me grab my bowl here. So just to add a little extra decoration, a little extra something fun, we have these crumbs that come from our tart shells. So it's really, it's like using every piece of the buffalo. Every piece of everything we use gets used in somehow, some way. So we even out the edges of our tart shells. Because we make all of those here. We save all the crumbs and we use them for this one for a couple other things.
You mean this one isn't the one I saw you drop 2 hours ago?
Wow.
That's for tomorrow's dish, right?
Yeah, there you go. So, we'll move this so you can see it. Alright. You're just going to take it here. I have always been awful at drawing and painting, so it's kind of like, okay, that doesn't really make sense. And, you know, if you're measuring a kid's art skills, you're going to measure drawing and painting. But then, it was never really like nurtured in that way, that in classes or anything like that. Even though my sister's an artist and she does all the classes and stuff like that, she's really good at the drawing. She was always seen as the artistic one, and then we got older, and I really started doing more stuff with my hands. And then I realized, like, okay, I'm way more like a sculpture type artist. And I'm really into cake decorating. I'm really into cookie decorating and all that visual stuff. So it's hard, but it's a little different than your norm.
Well, and I don't know if you're the one who makes the gingerbread house.
Yeah. That was me. I love gingerbread. If I could do it full time, I would. It's just such an incredible creative expression, and there's just so much you can do in it, and so much more than cake or really anything else.
So if anybody's interested, there's a beautiful gingerbread house at North Shore Boulangerie, maybe more than one.
There are 5 structures.
5, yeah. So we've got, it's basically my interpretation of the North Pole made out of gingerbread. So Santa's house is really big, shiny, all of the detail, everything, fun little balcony. And next to it, you have a little gazebo where sculpted figures of Santa and Mrs. Claus are sitting inside, and that gazebo spins around. And then we've got Santa's workshop, and I decorated our little
every year, and I don't think it happened this year, is the gingerbread competition from the METC Culinary School
Yes.
that is displayed at the public market.
Right. So they only have 3 houses this year, and they're on display at various different bakeries in the area. But I had participated in that competition 2 years in a row, and I won People's Choice both times. So that was super
That's
exciting.
fantastic. It is absolutely awesome. So I hope it's going to happen in 2021 again.
I hope so too.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we are also selling some gingerbread cookie kits, so you can see on the display. There's little reindeer, and it's basically a body, and then 2 sets of legs that kind of all attached together, and they're little reindeer. They're super easy. We're gonna be selling kits, so you get like 3 torsos and 6 sets of legs, so that's enough to make 6 reindeer. And they're super cute, super fun. You also get 2 little bags of icing, so you get some red icing and some white icing, and you can decorate them however you want. Your kids, your grandkids can decorate them however you want. And then you can put them together, and it's like, can they eat them? They might eat them right away, but this is a fun little thing for the holidays, especially this year when everything's crazy. So those will be.
Let people know that they can see all your beautiful work on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I have social media for my different cakes and cookies and things like that. So you can follow me everywhere at whisk.chick. So WHISK.chick, CHI. If you want to check that out. And I've got photos of the gingerbread and stuff on there too. I know that's all on the North Shore Boulangerie.
And maybe we can
Social media.
we can also share that on in the chat.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So for the finishing touch on these, what really just adds that really extra special note of I don't know, that's the elegance of these that I love the pizzazz. We're gonna add a little piece of gold leaf to the top. So this is our gold leaf. Edible, obviously.
Is it just any old gold leaf, or do you have to get a special edible gold leaf?
I'm not really sure how it ranks. Every time I get it, it's like FDA approved. So some people use it for makeup, and you can use it for. It's all edible, so you can probably find that online. Yeah. So we're just gonna take a little piece. You can see my hands are shaking. And just put it right on top.
So this is real gold on the volcano.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Wow, that's
correct.
amazing.
Mhm. And then we cut into them. See what it looks like from the inside.
So does it need to freeze or anything, or it's just?
We keep them in the fridge after this. And they're great. They're good to go. So let's throw them in here. These here. Can you see it okay? All right. My son don't want to come up there. So there we go. We've got your
That's amazing.
cake, compote, mousse, the glaze on the outside. I don't know how well you can see it from here. They're really special. They're so delicious. They're packed with flavor and all kinds of fun stuff.
And it's amazing to think that you started with eggs and milk, and then you end up with
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think much of it anymore, but when you're first learning these things, you'd call this an entremet, so basically a layered frozen dessert, something along those lines. But very French style. It's like opening up a whole new world. And you could do this with different flavors and mousse and different fruits and cake and all that stuff. We have another dessert similar to this that we developed, I think, in the springtime, and it's basically the same concept, but it's in a pyramid shape. The cake is coconut du pois. Then for the fruit, we have strawberry jelly, and then blood orange mousse, and it's glazed really nicely. It looks really nice. So yeah, any other questions?
Could you give a little bit of a plug for the METC Culinary School? How do people apply? How long does it take?
So it's pretty quick, especially compared to most other colleges. I applied when I was a senior in high school. Great teachers, great program. I have nothing but positive things to say about the program. The teachers are some of the most highly ranked pastry chefs in Milwaukee. We have MHGC has some of the best equipment. You know, a $40,000 chocolate tempering machine. We have all the sheeters, all the ovens, every piece of equipment you could possibly need. We have it, and it's incredible.
And is it very competitive to get in?
I mean, they only have a certain number of spots for each class, but generally, they want you there. They'll try to make room for you. The teachers will do as much as they can to make sure you get in. It's not like a rigorous application process. And if any background, any career, anything, just like any college, you can apply to that program. And most likely be accepted.
And we had just one question, Jack, because I think some of the sound was lost from us, just about the construction. So maybe you just say one more time, like when the mousse comes out of the freezer.
Oh, yeah, sure. So basically, you have your mousse and you make it, and then you can see it's already aerating a little bit in here. And then you have the chocolate cake circle. You have your berry compote molded into a nice little dome. You stick the compote onto the cake, and then you stick it in the mousse, in the mold, and you just even out the sides. It's pretty straightforward. You're just sticking it all together.
So the only frozen part was the compote.
Yes, and then we freeze the mousse overnight, so that it comes out of the mold really nicely.
Oh, you're okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Anything else?
Fantastic.
Thank you so much again for having us. We really appreciate it. This was so fun.
Amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Awesome. And nice to meet all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.